Yeah, well, you know, I got to be honest and say I don't put my hair up too often these days, unless I'm in the shower or something. But as I did that, I found myself spinning back to when I was 20 and getting married to my first husband. And I put my hair up not to look gorgeous to be married, but because people thought I was only 16. And when I actually got pregnant soon after that, I didn't get pregnant before. I was actually, you know, not a virgin, but you know what I mean. In those days, you couldn't be a naughty girl. You know, you had to be very private and quiet, not like today. So, you know, here I'm trying to look the perfect bride. And, you know, somebody came up to me when I got pregnant after you, about 4 months later. I was at the hospital because that's what you did in those days, and for the checkup to make sure I am pregnant and so on, you know, and all the rest of it. So different in those days. And somebody came up to me and said, "You going to be all right?" And I'm like, "What? Yeah, I'm all right, fine. Yeah, you know, are you sure? How are you going to cope?" And there's all these other women in the room with me as well. That's how I did it. And finally, one of them had more courage than the others, and she said, "But you're not married. How are you going to cope with a baby?" And I'm like, "I am married, you know, because women used to wear a ring on their finger, right? And pretend they were married. And they did not believe me for the 3 months that followed, because you go back, same women there, you know, oh, you're going to keep your baby? And I'm like, of course I'm keeping it. You know, and I didn't know that the original first questions were followed. They'd been chatting about me. And so when I arrived at, you know, 3 months later, they're full of questions about my um, not being married, you know. So for years, I was putting my hair up because I didn't want to look like an unmarried mother. And here today, we're going forward here. This is a big issue now for women about being pregnant, having babies, not having babies, the laws, the changing laws, you know. And I'd like to pick up on that in a while, because, you know, when we reminisce, like me remembering putting my hair up, I could immediately feel, because I'm used to feeling that memory going through my body. Do you ever have that when you think of something and it just sort of shoots through you and you feel that, oh, you get that visit of that emotion, whatever it was? Yeah. Mm. I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because you come right forward into now. And I want you to, sorry, I'm pushing you because people want to know you, okay? When we reminisce, there are bad stuff that we don't want to remember, but it's there and it comes up in our bodies. So what was going on when you were fussing about your hair and it was short? I want to know what you were feeling and thinking when you had it cut short. Mm. Did you like it? Mm. Well, for me, I'm interrupting you again, but this hair up business that I said for getting married, well, that marriage only lasted about 5 years, and probably about after four and two kids, I went to the hairdresser and I had it all cut off. He looked gorgeous for 5 minutes till the next day, and I had a pudding basin, and I was like, "What have I done to myself?" Mm, mm. Well, it wasn't only that. I mean, you got to remember that today you can buy the willy nilly, but back when I was your age, younger, you had to wear a wig. I was modeling and I was always having to wear a wig of some sort, long hair, short hair, and that, so you could actually look different. And when you look in the mirror with a different kind of hairpiece on or a different something, you become someone else. And I understand how actors, because I did that as well, actors and actresses, you become this something else. So when I reminisce and I go back to just the hair alone, I can bring up the kind of clothes we wore, okay, whether I liked them or not. I was a skinny Reiki person, so I was like, I knew different models of the time, and we all congregated, came together, separated, and whatever we were all doing in some way, we were this person, this identity. And back then, in those days, when I think about how we weren't ourselves. Whereas today, children, adults, they can be themselves. Back then, it was you have to be how everyone else expected you to be, whether you were going to be a model, a superstar, a singer, a dancer, or Mrs. Housewife up the road who goes to church every Sunday. There was a way to be, to behave. And I'm not talking about class and things like that. I'm just talking about as a woman, you had to have an appearance. You haven't had to go through that, have you? But wait a minute, we're supposed to be reminiscing. And, you know, and you're talking about now, you know, and so I know you're half my age, but there must be some things that you like, you went to the fun fair or you went to the circus in Australia. There's got to be something that had to be nice and good times that you think about, oh, and I'd like to take my children there and have them have that experience. You know, I know for me that my parents, you know, for all their arguing and screaming and everything that went on in our little tiny apartment in London, there was the other side where my mom made sure I could go to ballet classes. My sister went to riding classes. They couldn't afford it, but somehow they found it. And so I have good and bad memories. I have, you know, events like going to school and being picked on all the time, like you were saying, you know, and being a psychic throughout my life. I was probably in so many different ways hurt 1,001 times. In, you know, and I don't go there in terms of reminiscing. I go back to remember the good times. And that's kind of why I picked the topic today. I wanted to keep us more positive because, you know, no matter what our age is, with the first 5 years, we are absorbing whatever's going on around us, and people tell us how to behave, what to do, how to look, and so on, which is why I put out the understanding that, you know, my teenager years, we had a certain way to behave, which doesn't exist today. It's so different. So if you talk to anyone that's 80 years old, they're going to reminisce and say, well, I remember mum was baking the sponge cake, and then they couldn't buy one in the stores because they didn't make them yet. You know, well, that's a big gap to you that you don't have that. But what I'm looking for is, what does your generation have that you can remember that does not exist today? Because young kids are going to listen to this, and they don't know how we lived. They don't know what we went through. So I didn't want to really shove a lot of negativity. I want to give them something positive to know that we, as mothers, grandmothers, and whatever, as women, have come a long road in standing for our independence, our freedom. And now there are young mothers, you know, who don't realize what the pathway has been for women in reminiscing and talking what's going on. It's just, oh, she's talking about this again and that, but they don't realize the trials and the tribulations we went through. So I just thought it'd be nice if we could share some positive things first. So where did you go for happy times? Yeah. Hmm. Did you escape? Did you go somewhere? Well, I would run off to the local park. I would be crying. I'd sit on the seat and I would look at everything that's been coming down. Then I'd start looking at the flowers and the trees. Mind you, I had spirit guides in my head, you know. But somehow I always managed, I've lost you. Somehow I've always managed to find something back then that even if it was a movie, going to a movie or something, you know. So are we having a technical problem? Okay. All right. So for me, I'm going to reminisce another little bit. When the Queen of England got crowned, we all had to line the streets and wave our little flags, right? And so I was right on the edge of the street, and the car was like 2 feet, if that, away from me as it went past. And my dad said, wave, and he bent me over like that so that I felt like I was going to fall on top of the car. But the Queen saw me and she waved directly at me. That was a moment. She probably never even thought about it, but I guess she thought I was going to fall on the car too, or so. It was one of those moments, you know. Do you have any moments? Huh? Mm. Well, that sounds nice. So, where did you go? All over Australia, and I can't even get to Australia yet. Let's tell some people what Australia's like. What do you remember it as like? And I'm going to interject. How many children know how to knit today? Question mark. You see, that is a big difference between now and today because the kids, they're told, oh, it's broken, put it in the trash, we'll buy you a new one. So there's a difference just between your upbringing and the kids today, and there's a greater difference between what I went through and so on. So that's why I'm talking about reminiscing. I'm going to come forward a little bit more. After I'd been modeling, I was working with the churches, spiritual churches. In those days, if you went to a church or synagogue or anywhere, it was about the religion. There was no philosophy. It's here's the text, this is the book, this is what you read, this is the hymn, this is the psalm, this is whatever it is in some way. And I would go to the vicar and people like that and say, well, you said ABC, but I don't believe that. I think XYZ. And they look at me like I was like, you're a devil. What was it like for you getting into alternative things, psychological things? How were you treated? Well, like for being into how the mind works and what the emotions are all about, because you came into this in your teenage years. How were you treated? Yeah. So I'm going to interrupt you here. You're remembering. When we remember, that's a reminisce. Okay. As you remember, what are you doing to yourself? Are you having any emotions about this? Or are you cold about it? Okay. The reason I brought this up is because, you know, your generation, and I saw it in my children as well, would block out what my generation would tell them. Like, if you do this and this, something will happen. And so a lot of the kids, including, one of my sons, ran away from home because we don't want the rules. We don't want the disciplines that we were as adults, when we were children, were controlled by. And here today, we've got youngsters who are so aware, right, that when their parents try to tell them, their response in terms of being so brainy and so clever, or whatever it is they can do, kind of makes the parent feel like, I don't know anything, like my child is so brilliant and I don't know anything. So what do you think about that? Because you're both ends, you're in the middle here with your mom and you've got your children this small. Hmm. But what about, when you were just talking, for example, you remember the teachers. Do you have any fun memories with any of the teachers? I certainly do. So, most of them were vicious, but there was three that I really admired. Mhm. That's what we do. It's a natural thing as we age. Yeah. Well, it does, but people don't believe themselves. That's the problem. Part of the reason I'm doing reminiscing here is I realized at your age, when I was your age, I was the same as you. I opened my mouth and I complained and I saw everything was negative and I justified and rationalized and excused and you name it, I did it, even though I had the spirit guides in my head who would say you're entitled to just think ABC, but here is XYZ. And I would be going, yeah, but I can't get into XYZ because it's too painful and I don't want to know. But when I had my death scenario, that was when I had to realize that looking back at all these people who had come into my life, whether they were the vicar at the church or, some woman that mum knew, or when I was very young doing all the mini readings at 2, ages onwards. And so what happened for me when I look back at all these people, I began to realize that every single one of these people that I could recall and think about that I didn't like actually gave me a big present in that they tested me, they pushed me, they prodded me, they made me grow. I hated it, I loved it, but actually by the time I really realized what they'd done for me, including my father, who was a real and ended up becoming my student, that it was perfect. And I've written a lot of books, as you know, but I still reminisce even now when I'm working. Remember, I'm working thesis on the throat chakra and the face and the 5 senses and the head and the brain and how that cellular neuromuscular memory. It's a big project I'm working on. And without my reminiscing, without my admitting my good parts and my bad parts, I couldn't do what I'm doing right now. So it's partly why I'm trying to get you to be some positive ones, because those positive ones are door openers to something more. I can hear you. You're working well enough for me. Oh, keep talking. Okay. Well, I'll give another little bit of reminiscing. I loved tennis when I was in school. And I tried so hard to be a top team member. And I was always sit on the back bench, and if someone breaks a knee, maybe I'll get a chance, kind of thing. And I started playing again with my father when I was, I don't know, about 18 after nursing. I came home for a while. And that was a breaking point for my father to come out and actually play tennis with me. So I'm 18 or so, and he's going to be 25 years older than me. So that was a time when we could bond in a way that we'd never bonded before. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was meditating on myself, was working on all of this and got to write the book, or several books. I think it'll be 3 books. But anyway, this was so important to me because it was like the clue into that one thing with tennis led me to remember all the other people that I played with, the kids that I played with, and I could see some of them I didn't like so much because they always beat me, because I was in judgment, they beat me. So, oh, I don't like them anymore. I don't play with them anymore. And you remember when we were children, playing dollies or whatever, same thing. So and so has taken my dolly. I don't like you anymore. I'm not going to play with you anymore.
But then later on, you went straight back to playing tennis, and you're 79 years old now.
Yeah, well, I played on and off. I went back into it in my 40s, and I went back into it in my 60s, and then I went back into it recently. My memory says I'm a wonderful player, but my reality is where's the ball? I missed it. But at least one is out there. And the point here is to say that when we reminisce, we are pressing emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual buttons. And it's far better if you can to try and go on the positive memories so that you can refresh and review and rejuvenate your body to look younger and so on. Whereas if you go back into the reminiscing of the negatives, your body starts to get old. You start to look older than you are. I was standing with someone just 2 days ago in the grocery store, and this woman had a face like this, was all miserable, and she, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Her face was lined, and she was wanted to talk to someone. I was there in line waiting for the grocery store, and it came out as her birthday, and I'm thinking she must be all of 78 or something. Turned out she was 62. Okay. And then she said, well, you're young, aren't you? You're only, about my age. And I said, actually, I'm nearly 80. She was like, what? And I said, well, memories, you see. And this is my point, is that we are a bag of memories. And, if you think about a bag of memories, or let's make it a pot of, chocolates like in the movie, some have got hard centers and some have got soft centers, right? And so some of our memories are really emotional, and we just want to cry with joy of remembering it, or cry with sorrow of remembering it. And I'll go into the negative in a minute. But I learned that for every negative that I had emotionally upset me, I had to find a positive in order to put the balance in. It's imagine the scales, like sometimes you take a candy and it is tough and you've got to chew on it. And other times it's so tasty, you just gobble it up and you wish you had more, and so that's the way of life. You every day there's something good and there's something bad. Like I went into Ross and I found I'd asked Spirit, I needed 2 more of these. So I'm going to show everybody. Gold pots. I needed 4. They only had 2 5 months ago. And Spirit told me just 3 days ago, go to Ross. So I went in and I'm looking for something entirely different, moseying around, and there, lo and behold, was the 2 more that I'd asked Spirit to find for me some 6 months ago. So that's why I've got one here handy right now. The good Lord provided, okay, whether you believe it or not, people provide. People give us, a tickle under the arm, as it were, and it might hurt us at the time, but later you realize that made me stronger. That gave me something. That was actually a present. So where I'm coming from in saying to you, what can you remember? I'm trying to get you to remember some good stuff.
You know what? I spent a long time blocking a lot of things out and just letting it all go, because I just, after 29 years of trauma, it's a lot of stuff that had to be gotten rid of in order to get where I am. And like I said, I became who I am because I wanted to help people overcome, and that's just the basic of it. But underneath it all, as an intellectual person, I was constantly buried in the books. That's my way of
escaping
or coping with everything was to literally be alone.
And the bottom line is, a lot of people out there listening today are doing just that. They're escaping. They don't want to reminisce. They don't want to look back, because if they do, it's going to hurt. They're sticking a knife in there. Now I'm going to move over to back in the when I was nursing. They were still doing the lobotomies and the electrical shocks on the brain, because they didn't know anything about the brain. They were all saying that it was certain areas were this and that, and so I won't bore people to be technical. but the bottom line is that today we now know that no 2 people's brains are the same.
No,
and that
exactly.
We individually store all our memories in different areas in the brain, not like they said, like here is all your loving memories and here is all your hating memories. It wasn't like that, and it isn't like that. And now we know that. And here we have with all these little kids, like your own children, who have got so much going on in their brains, and they're coming in brilliant, or some of them a little bit behind, because we see them come on, for example, I'm going to pitch here singing. You see them coming on to, say, the X Factor or something, and they got Tourette's syndrome, or they've got some cancer thing or something going on, and they're like 7-10 years old, and they open their mouths and sing, and all that stuttering is gone, all that knowledge and wisdom that they don't know is gone, and what comes out is this gorgeous voice. Why? They're in the zone, they're in the space. Well, I believe from my life's experience, because you were talking about 25 years of pain and suffering, try having 60 years of pain and suffering and see what you feel in the future, because it's all about point of view. We can either look, and I did it, is why I died, till I was 37. I was the miserable person on the block, even though I had a smiley face in public. Nobody would have guessed a million years what I'd been through, okay? But the bottom line is, it didn't end there, because even when I came over to America, there was still 101 problems. There was all sorts of things going on. And the world was changing. And here was I launched into something technical that I haven't even, without you, I'm lost. Thank you. But coming back to reminiscing, it's very important for everyone in psychology and psychiatry to be able to remember the images, because it's the images. Then we have conscious images, subconscious images, and deep subconscious images. And within all of those images is 1,000 words, right? So if I said to you, can you visualize a penguin struggling to get out of the ocean in all that waves and all that cold freezing weather, and then having to walk like this for miles to find your hubby who's busy holding your baby egg, and when you get there, you're going to be very, very careful how you get your baby egg into a little baby you're going to grow while hubby's doing the walk back.
Are we talking about humans, or are we talking about penguins?
We're talking about penguins, but that's what humans are like as well, see? You got it. We get involved, we get focused, we really struggle, we really try to achieve our goals, whatever they may be, and we'll even go to the point of dying for it, because it's so important to us.
But at the same time, we also get those people who are still in that state. They overcome, they get where they need to be, they do the healing, they do the growth, they which is a continual.
Now, but back when I was young,
no, but what I'm
there
saying,
wasn't anything to go to. There was no awareness. It was all society and structure, and you were born into that.
And even then, you still, it still doesn't matter what time period it is, now or then or in the future. These people pop up, and perfect example of that are people who they see your growth, they see the things that you're doing, they see the great things that you're doing, that you are an example of what excellence would look like, because you've done the work on yourself. And then you see these other people that will continually say to you, you'll never make it. You won't become this. You won't do this. You will never be anything without me. You'll be lonely. You'll be this. You're not supported. You will never become something great because you don't have the support around you.
Flip it. Here's the thing. What are you getting out of that?
That's the problem. And see, here's the thing. When people start to progress and you get that reminiscent thought, okay, I'm doing great. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I've overcome. Then you have people that come and step on your path and say, all of that jazz, I'm this and I'm that and blah, 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 and you'll never make it. And it's a bullying tactic. And unfortunately, for those people who are properly healing, it's not going to affect them. And I'm saying,
well, if it's modern days people, it's a lot different. But back when you were born, like with your mother, for example, there were many things she couldn't talk about, which she's now talking about, which is another show. But the bottom line is, my mother was a cripple, And my mother's world was 2 miles to the, not even that, 1 mile to the church and 1 mile the other way to the store. And 9 times out of 10, she'd have to get a cab because she couldn't walk too far as she got older, you know. So I lived with a handicapped person, and then my dad comes back from, the war with post-traumatic stress disorder and the stiff upper lip English thing, which of course, who is the battering ram? Me, but that's neither here nor there here. What I'm saying is that the way of life, dependent on who we are and the period in time that we come into, no matter who we are, we have a quantum amount of visual memories in here, pictures.
Yes, but
and when we see those pictures, there's two sides to the coin with every single picture, every single one.
But the thing is that that's exactly, you're exactly right. But the thing is the reason why I brought up what I just brought up is because we reminisce, then we work on ourselves, and then we work towards the future, which is where it brings us now. The problem is for those who are not working on themselves, who are constantly wounded, so to speak, who become belligerent unto themselves, not realizing that it is just a projection of the wounded self that you're projecting. The person, so when you come out and you say to somebody after they've done their growth and you've seen their healing and you've seen what they're doing now, you are not doing nothing but projecting your own problems or your own traumas onto another person that is actually doing well. Which is where you have jealousy and envy and all of those other things. It's nothing but a belligerent behavior that needs to stop.
Well, exactly. And the only way it's going to stop is if people learn to look at their images.
Look at yourself in the mirror.
Push them away. If I hadn't have had my spirit guides with me, I have to admit that I've had a lot of help through all the trials and tribulations that I've been through. And I would never even bother everybody with all the trials and tribulations because they were for me to grow through and develop what I've been able to do. But the bottom line is, for the number of thousands and thousands of people that I've seen and taught and trained and whatever, always what I see, for example, with Japan, is the tradition when I first went there was to wear a katan or to wear, their full regalia at nighttime and dress up and go here and go there and bow and do all this, and the women were very second-class citizens behind the guys and so on. Now today with the new generation, they don't want to do the traditions. They don't wear the katan, they don't wear the kimono, the girls don't dress up and put all the makeup on and all the things in their hair like they used to. All that has gone. Now, in another way, having been there and witnessed all that in those days, there was a beauty about it. There was something so treasurely, passionately something in those women that said, I've only got me, and me is important, and dressing up or whatever it was. And I could relate to that when I was watching them and working with them, that when I was modeling, dressing up in these clothes took me away from the pain I was suffering. And there's a lot of this hiding of these emotions, but there is a lot of joy in being in the moment while it's coming down around you, because you actually need it. You need to have the joy. You can't have non-stop, everything being bad. For example, I just told a woman recently, because she'd grown up with, you can't have anything, you can't touch anything, you can't go anywhere, you can't, etc. And I told her to go out to the local shop like Walmart or something and try everything on and not buy a thing, touch every bit of jewelry, don't buy a thing. Just walk around saying to yourself, I can touch anything, I can try anything, I can do anything, and I'm in charge of me. Mm-hmm. And she went off and did that, and she came back and she was laughing, she was giggling, and she said, I can't believe I did that. That was the first words out. I can't believe that I
went
that.
through. See, I went through that period too, and you know, it took me a while because I was being controlled for a very long time. You know, it was kind of like walking on broken eggshells in a way. Um, for the majority of my life, and unfortunately, you know, going back to what I was saying before, reminiscing, that was the past. Now the future is the fact that, no, now when people think that I'm unsupported, I really am fully supported. I have a network of friends. I have I've spent a lot of time rebuilding and going forward in what I do. You know, I went out to get more education. I went enhanced my education. I went ahead and
Wait. Question mark? How much of that went out and did were you enjoying? And what reminiscing can you come up with now about what you were doing?
And see, here's the thing, is that everything that I learned, I then reflected on through doing the education that I do, which has got me forward to now, where I now pay it forward to educate other people on the very same things that I went through.
So how many people are you going to teach to knit?
I don't know. Who wants to knit? Anybody out there want to knit?
You see, what I'm getting at is that whether we're a young mum, an old mum, or a grandma, you know, the female aspect, whether we like it or not, is to make, is to do something. And we've kind of stepped into the male shoes now, and we've become women of business. Let's put it that way. It's enough to it. And of course, some women are in business like us, you know, and we love what we're doing because we found what we're doing. But there's a quantum amount of many who will come and bang on your door and tell you they hate their job, they hate what they're doing, but they have to do it because there's nothing else to do.
It's their bread.
Yeah.
But at the same time, but they
that isn't the truth, because if you go into your reminiscing, you can find you've got talents and skills that you put on the back burner, which had you have used when you were younger, might well be your leading business today. We have choices, in other words, in what we want to look at, how we look at it, and when we want to see the good side of it or the bad side of it. Mm-hmm. So, for example, how can you say lying on the floor, being kicked a lot and hit a lot, in order to prevent violence going on in children, okay, you take it, you allow it to happen, you curl up, you do whatever. And I was used to having lots of punishments and hit, you know, through growing up as well. And so, you know, that became my modality. Now, when I had my own children and they wouldn't do what they were supposed to do, I would yell and scream at them, sit down, stop doing this, stop fighting one another, whatever it was. And then they wouldn't listen and they'd give me lip, as we used to say in those days. And then I'd be running around with a spoon, trying to smack their bottoms, because it was okay for me to hit them, because it was okay for me to be hit. Now today, you can't hit a kid. No. Because, you know, they're going to call the policeman on you. And actually, one of my sons, he did slap his boy across the face because he was really rude and aggressive and so on, and he was drunk and he was trying to sober him up, and he went and called the police. Mm-hmm. And the police came, and of course they heard, and he was no end of, you know, it was the end of the topic, because they could see for themselves that he was, you know, a child who was on the wrong side of himself. Mm-hmm. But you know, it happens, and I was talking to this particular boy because, you see, there's the habit, tradition, whatever you want to call it, passed down from generation to generation. So now these children that are being born, who are brilliant and talented and whatever, have got parents who want to help them, but they don't know how. Maybe they don't have enough money to buy food or whatever, and so they are taking the memories of what happened to them being hit and whatever. So we're still seeing those things going on. How can you say, you know, and I can honestly say from my experiences, being hit and beaten up, how can I say I enjoyed that? I didn't, obviously. But what I can say is I came out of that with a will. that I would be superior to the circumstances. In other words, I would think ahead, I would plan out what I can do, I would watch out what's happening, I'd read the signs, I'd understand what's happening. So as a result of that, I learned psychology in action. So it wasn't negative, it was a positive event.
And it's the same
so
reason.
When I reminisce, I remember what I learned, not how I felt when I was beaten up. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's the same reason why I do not promote any type of violence in my own household, and that's because of one, I am a mother, and two, I have young children who are in fact boys. So what am I going to do if I am someone that is I'll just call it what you will, violently disciplined, a violent disciplinary? What am I teaching my boys? I'm not teaching them to become protectors. I'm not teaching them to live with honor and chivalry and, so, you know, on all of the list that comes underneath it, with compassion. You know, I'm not teaching them anything by promoting it. And so in my own household, I don't promote it whatsoever. And that's because I've had a background in it as well. But let me put forth to you this phrase. What do you think about this phrase, or somebody that uses this phrase? It is what it is.
I never used it until recently, and I've had a lot of people saying it to me, so I started using it. And to me, it's literal. It is what it is means right now in this particular situation. It's manifest this way, and it's manifested this way for me to have an opportunity to examine it. Whether I accept it or don't, and whether I move on in the next moment is my choice. So I'm a psychologist here. I'm rationalizing. But let's put it into the emotions, and let's say my sister died, okay? That was a week ago. And my immediate response talking to my nephews was, they're weeping, so I'm feeling the weep. But I don't have the weep because I have the joy of knowing that when the oneness takes over, they let you reminisce with all the people you've seen, and then they take you into the spirit world. And I had that experience with my sister, so after she passed. So I'm happy camper. Okay, but I realize that the average person can't understand this. They haven't had that education. They haven't had the physical experience of dealing with someone passing, or they haven't had the understanding of the spirit world or the psyche. There's just so many angles to any given situation. And I'm just using death right now, my sister, not as an example. She didn't have COVID, she had cancer. But this is an example, you see, where if you do the negative, my sister did do a lot of the negative in her life and had a lot of pain and suffering as well. Her point of view was different from mine. So I've learned over the years, looking at different people, different maladies, and like MS, MD, Parkinson's disease, all that, Alzheimer's, post-traumatic stress disorder. It goes on and on. All those people who do not go back and see the good of the bad get sick and die. The people who go back and reminisce about whatever happened and turn it around to see the good and release those emotional traumas from a cellular neuromuscular memory, rejuvenate. And when we rejuvenate, we look younger. Okay, so I've spent, ever since I had my breakdown, obviously, and died, I've spent years deprogramming, and I'm still, as I said, with my face and head moving, I'm still working with my beauty, crystal, acupuncture, and psychology and psychiatry and all this. And, it's just amazing to me that we can take all our thoughts emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, practically, and put those in one cell throughout the body. And you'll hear people say that within one cell is a, what do you call it, heliogram? I can't find the word. Helogram, or something gram, is an exact picture, a copy of you in that cell. And that exact copy of you in that cell is light, this explosion of energy. Now, I can talk about that today, but can you imagine me going into a church, in England, and going up to the vicar and saying, in every cell in your body is a little miniature you. You might just said it like that. They'd say, "Oh, she's got to go to the what do you call it? Mental asylum because she's off a rocker, But back in those days, I saw, they'd show me, spirit would show me like a drop of water, and in the drop of water, I could see myself. And that's how they taught me eventually years later to take that same picture of that drop of water and see my reflection in that water into a single cell with a neuron and see my face in that cell. And I went, oh, that's what I'm talking about. But it didn't end there, because I then saw my miserable face in that cell. And that was when I began to realize I have to dump my miserable face. And the only way you can dump it, because there's so much history, every second of the day, of every year, of every week, month, and whatever, you're having thoughts that come in through your brain at 286,000 miles per second. So by the time you're rationalizing here on a conscious level that you haven't got anything to reminisce, you've already done it back here 286,000 times per second before you even know that it's happening in your body. So what is the key to our reminiscing is the emotion. And if we lock that emotion up and hide it away and pretend I'm over it, it's gone, it's done, it's going to come up somewhere in your life and hit you slap in the face.
Nothing is ever completely done. Unfortunately, when we have that past reflection, then we do go back to it. And going back to the phrase, it is what it is, those people who understand what it is, that entire phrase itself, meaning that psychologically, they've developed what is called Teflon hearts, or my version of a Teflon heart. Teflon meaning non-stick. In other words, anything that is hurled at them is repelled, and they are very dangerous. What could be perceived as dangerous people, because they no longer allow the things that are outside of their control to affect their inner peace. So going back to what I originally said before about...
Hang on, I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm sorry, but I got to do this. You wouldn't have said a Teflon heart 10 years ago.
Yeah, I did, actually.
Because it wasn't invented.
Yes, it did.
Well, whenever it was invented.
I said it 10 years ago as well. Because the original
one was lousy, used to peel off. I had one that, this is the greatest thing, it's cream cheese, and they use it about 4 times and it didn't work. Okay. But I'm saying that because I want to catch it so people understand you can't brush out your emotions. They're deep-seated in you. Not on the surface. They're not stuck on there, are they? No. They're deep inside your soul.
Yes,
so what do you really mean by Teflon? That's what I wanted to get you back to.
Well, I already explained what Teflon meaning.
Yeah,
Teflon
but stuck on,
Teflon meaning
what's it mean to you?
Repelling,
reminiscing,
repelling that emotion that is attached to that said situation or circumstance that happened at that particular time. Meaning that it is what it is, meaning when I'm reminiscing about the past, it is what it is. In other words, I have mastered the art of acceptance. And so anything along my path from here on out, if you plan, and that is for those people who are subconsciously or consciously trying to sabotage me or anybody else around them, is if you try to manipulate or sabotage me or any other person, not just my story, but there are so many other people that can relate to this as well, plan on manipulation or threatening right? Basically, in other words, by saying it is what it is, means that no fucks will be given, excuse my language, but no fucks or zero fucks will be given. And there's the door. It doesn't matter about, and the door could be a conscious door, it could be a physical door, it could be anything. In other words, whatever has happened in my life, and I'm talking about me from as an example, whatever's happened in my life, don't think for 1 second you can sabotage or manipulate me in order to get where I want to go, because my life is now in control. My life is now supported. My life is now moving forward, with or without you, regardless. And so it is what it is. The past is the past, and it should stay there. And I've accepted it is accepted whatever's happened in the past as it is, and left it there.
I hear you. If I do that, I feel I've shut a door of myself, because throughout my life and my experiences, if I can't go back and recall, then I can't see my growth. I can't understand the itty bitty stuff of it that I need to see. I don't want an overview. I want the details. That's how I've always been. And, I tend to encourage my patients and my students to, when I'm working with them, to understand that every little bitty emotion, every little, from, like I've got a memory that comes here with my sister. I gave her a very first ice cream. It was a tiny one out of the ice cream van. And she was full of glee with it. Her face was lit up. And I can see it even now. It's a precious moment. And as she brought it up to her mouth, because it was cold and she's still coordinating, she doesn't know what she's doing, so it hits her in the face. And of course that was a shock because of the cold. She dropped it. And I only had enough money for 2 cones, and little ones in those days for kids. And I'm 4.5 years older than her, so I was probably about 7. Because that was when I had to start being responsible for her as well, because my mother and father were, going through their thing, and my mother's crippled. So I got mine and I gave it to her. And unlike the first time where I'd put it in her hand, just let her have it, I put it in her hand and held her hand and guided it to her face so that she could lick it. And some woman said something about, oh, you are such a good sister, and bought me a cone as well. Okay. Now that's a precious reminiscent moment. Okay. Where I learned that in giving and caring and showing and teaching my sister, I got taught that I was a good girl. It wasn't much, but it went in deep. And so over the years, my dad would also tell me, in one breath he'd beat me up or whatever, and the next breath he'd tell me I'm good, So you never knew what was going to come at you. But that particular moment was a treasured moment that I never lost. You must have some like that yourself, surely. Can you? I'm pushing you.
I've totally gone blank this evening. You know what? From my personal experience, I've had a lot of people who have attacked me, and so the reason why I say this, what I just said before, and that is because I've had a lot of people who are very jealous, very envious, very, very, and because I've been through trauma, through intimate partner violence. I've always been told, or conditioned to believe in the scope of my environment, not my own beliefs, but the scope of my environment, to believe certain things are the way that they are, when they're really not. And I've broken out of it. And so when I say that there's the door, go straight through it. I don't care anymore. The issue is that, and that's what I was talking about, projection. People project all the time. And when people reminisce about the projection, it's almost like the other person is trying to live a life that they can't fully grasp, and they're trying to live it through somebody else. But by doing so, they're also demeaning dragging them through the dirt just because they think that they think it's worthy of them to do it.
Well, let's take move on from the reminiscing bit to, let's take a marriage or relationship. Prince Charming comes along. He's wonderful. He's got good looks, good appearance. He tells you everything you want to hear. You want to believe it. You've got Prince Charming scenario. He's going to go out. He's going to get a job. He's going to buy a house. He's going to get a car. You're going to run around. You're going to have 4 babies or whatever, and you've got all these things in your mind because you've seen a movie.
I did.
Sorry, happy families. My throat chakra, I'm still working on it. I know I had that scenario in my head when I married on my first husband. And of course, that turned out to be a false hope and dream and so on and so forth, because I wanted happy families, because I didn't have happy families when I grew up. So then I go into a second marriage, and this person is seeming to be very wonderful and so on and so forth. Second marriage, turns out he's an alcoholic and liar and gambler. So, one more letdown. And then I marry Steve, and Steve was a wonderful husband. I will say that he didn't give me any problems, 100% supporting me and everything, but he did have an issue, his ill health. And so his ill health became my problem, okay? So what I'm saying here is, if you look at my 3 marriages, and then my boyfriends and things in between, or whatever I did, secret, I was able to balance the ups and downs, the ins and outs with, as a result of the way they were, I could see how I was brought into that by my idea in the first place, that I had expectations of how that was supposed to be, and maybe my expectations set up the scenario for all the bad things to happen.
And that is where when we teach about the traumas, about acceptance and acknowledgement, we have to understand that we are the ones that got ourselves in that position in the first place, and we have to understand and acknowledge that some things we were a part of, and not just sitting there wanting to go forth and become a victim, or be a victim, or be victimized in such a way.
And here we have to bring in that we are in miniature our parents.
Yeah.
The DNA, the RNA is running wild for the first 5 years, where we suck in our parents, grandparents, anybody, show me, demonstrate, this is how I'm supposed to behave, this is how I'm supposed to talk, and whatever it is. I don't talk the way I was brought up to speak, Queen's English. Oh, do you really want to do that all the time? I don't. I'm absolutely not sure. But if you do tell me, I'll be very interested in listening. See, I can do it still, but that's not me anymore.
You forgot the wave. You forgot the wave, dear love.
Yes, well, she did wave to me.
Mom.
But that was now I'm going to use my bullshit word now, because that was what I was born into, that this upper class society. And now we've gone through, there's no class anymore. Everybody's equal, everybody's the same. But
they
are? Guess what? We've lost respect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We've lost tradition in the, Christmas is not about happy families and Christmas. It's about, I've got to spend so much money and I've got to buy a present for this person and a present for that person. It's like,
how much
what
food
are we doing? When I was a kid, there wasn't any money. War had just finished. What do? We knitted a square and said, "Here's a pot holder." We learned to adapt.
And not only that,
here the kids are learning just to buy and throw. Something's got to change.
And not only that, I mean, how many of us go through Thanksgiving and Christmas? Well, I don't know about New Year's, but Christmas and Thanksgiving being the 2 most prominent. For women especially, I kind of count. I'm not just speaking on behalf of the guys out there, because there are some guys that do this as well. But I'm talking about how we get up in the morning, Thanksgiving morning, or Thanksgiving Eve, actually, the night before. Same thing for Christmas as well. Oh, what am I going to do for the day? I've got to do this, I've got to do that, the guests are coming, I've got to cook all this food and blah, 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 and it takes about 20 minutes to eat, and then now I've got to clean up. Do you know how stressful that is?
Oh, yes, I had too many of those things. Hundreds of them.
It's like, wow.
You know, I was just thinking to myself the other day when I was in the kitchen musing about cooking for myself, that, you know, washing up, we didn't have a dishwasher in England. Okay, I didn't have a even washing machine until I had Neil. So it was my eldest child. So I was about 21 when I birthed him. And I thought it was a tub that just went like this and a wringer. And I thought this was the most incredible thing to help me doing the washing, because it was always doing this at the sink and getting all your front all wet and dripping wet and whatever. To look what we've got now, you know, washers and dryers. It's automatic. Won't buy your house unless you've got a washer and dryer in it. I won't rent it unless you've got a washer and dryer.
Wait. We've come so far in our lives now that we just turn the light off.
Yep.
Like,
and
what the hell?
The thing is, we've lost the balance between what we feel and what we think. And we've got more and more people, because they don't reminisce. That's my point of this show. They don't go back. And you've been giving some of that example because you're half my age, you see. You haven't had the foundation stone I had. And while the foundation stone was horrible because we had World War II and one and all that before, forget that part for a minute, and just say, we did have make a home. We did have sew your own drapes. We did have, oh, you're moving in, paint the walls yourself. You know, we did. And my house, if you came to my house one day, you will, I did every bit you could see. The ceilings, the walls, the floors. The only thing I didn't do is have my carpets laid, because I can't do that. But I did do all my tiling on the floor. You know, to me, it's creative. It was relaxing. That was like my hobby, fixing my house up. Okay. Mm-hmm. But these kids today, my children even, they work in this business. They will go and get someone else to come and fix their homes and do it for them.
And it's the same way I run my own. My own is that I prefer to do it. Well, I prefer to do it on my own because I know what I'm doing. To nobody can really write like me anyway. So that's something that I have done for years now. In fact, next year will be actually my 10th anniversary since the first publishing of my first book. So yay me. But at the same time,
well done.
Yay me. I give myself a pat on the back for that one. But at the same time, you know, when I sit there and I say, you know what, I don't want any, and it's not that I don't want to. I'm not about delegation. The reason why is because I can move faster on my own because I already know what I'm doing. Not so much about expertise.
Living on my own now for 2 years, it's wonderful. It's quiet. It's just me and my dog, you know. But hey, my dog's not very well, and I keep, you know, it's like one more responsibility, you know. And I am thinking about, if I lose him because he's very old, I'll get another one. And the bottom line is company. We all want company. I mean, you got the children around you, so you got more than enough company. But we all need someone around us, and that's why old folks go out and get animals, you know, when they're left alone.
Yeah, but at the same time,
but the bottom line is there's still responsibilities, and no matter whether we're male or female, and I'm going into gay and straight relationships, it's the same lesson. It's still going on. If we cannot reminisce about what we remember when we were children, we can't see the lessons and the growth we've gone through, whether they've been good or bad memories. I'm now correlating them together. Whether they're good or bad memories, they are what, even today, now, this very moment, makes me who I am. Okay, so if you said to me, Margaret, can you speak French? I do not go into well, I did do French in school for 7 years and 10 years
Oui.
and this and that and that. No, I would just say, je parle français un peu, mais ce n'est pas bien. I've got it. That's where I go. I use it. So, not that I'm that good at French anymore, but it's there and I'll try. And it's the same with all the things that I've gone through, good and bad in my life. I've correlated them to I use them. So whether I'm working with someone and helping them, I can bring up a story about me or someone else. I write those in my books. I tell stories because I think people really listen by hearing a story. So, for example, if I say everybody has bones in their body, right? It's like, yeah, I know I have bones. But if I say, you know what a chicken bone looks like? Yeah. Well, you know what the thigh bone of a chicken looks like? Yeah. Well, that's what your humerus looks like, only it's much bigger in your arm. They're going to go, oh, is that what it looks like? You see? So people need to have associations and assimilations with their images. And if they've never seen one of my biggest, you'll know what it is, obviously. One of my biggest things that I used in Japan a lot was, what is a wombat?
It's an Australian animal.
No, don't say anything. Describe wom and bat in your mind as though you didn't know what that animal. It's an animal. We're giving people that, but you would think worm. What's a worm? Okay, maybe it sounds like a worm. Maybe it looks like a worm, and you'll be trying to work it out. You see,
I know what it is.
In Japan, they had no idea. I didn't even tell them it was an animal. I just said,
I know the answer though.
Yeah, well, of course you do. You grew up with
It's
them.
a type of cricket bat.
Okay.
You asked what to describe it.
Really is. Tell them what it really is.
It's an Australian animal.
It's a marsupial as well.
It's a marsupial.
Very important.
And it's got a little leg.
They're the only place in the world where they exist, right?
And yeah, and I could hug one right now if I had one right next to me.
Yeah, and they're the size of a cat.
Actually,
and they have a pointy face like a mouse. When you start describing it, you see, people who've never seen one will start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, right? It doesn't have a tail, so it's not like a mouse,
but it's... And they're not as vicious as a koala.
Right, see? But so we've described something and people have put it together. Now, that's my point about reminiscing. We go back. We remember something, we got the vision of it, we put the pieces of that puzzle, whatever that memory is, with another memory of another picture, of another something, as I was doing with the wombat. And so by the time I've gone through, say, 15 consciously knowing pictures, I've come up with a conclusion. Now that conclusion could be a positive or a negative one, but without remembering, which is what reminiscence is. Without remembering, we wouldn't know what we know today. You've got no comparisons. You just say, oh, I can knit. But you wouldn't be thinking what size needles, what color yarn, how many angles I hold my needles.
Which brings me to another thing. How many of us do exactly what you just described, but are robotic about it in the way that they think?
Well, maybe someone might call in one day and talk to us about it.
Because I mean, it is all good and well to reminisce, but how much of that reminiscence is actually habitual, that is carried on to, let's just say, the now, and we continue that cycle. And I'm talking just in general, not just, you can equate this to trauma.
You're doing it now. You're doing it all the time. We're all doing it. Yeah. It's never stopped.
You can equate it to trauma, or you can equate it to driving down the road and turning left at a traffic light, and you don't know why you don't turn right instead. And so how much of us are very, very habitual in the way that we think and the way that we do things in order to reminisce. You can't just, and it's like looking at a road map.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like looking at a road map. what we already know where we need to get, but we habitually don't get there because we're procrastinating the entire time, and so we
So there's another nice big word, procrastination. Okay. How often do you procrastinate and don't follow your emotions because your logic kicks in and says, well, it is what it is, as
Pretty
opposed
much.
to, well, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, I like to go that way. I'm a detective. You know, my coding, my soul vibration makes sure I'm a detective. So if someone says it can't be done, I'm saying where there's a will, there's a way. That's my famous saying for me. And, you know, even if it doesn't look like everybody expects it to look when I'm done, I found a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was crazy paving the front of my house in England, and I had no idea, I'd never done it. So I picked local builders' knowledge. How much sand do I need to order? Because he knew what I wanted to do, and how much cement. And then I said to him, how much cement do I mix with how much, you know, sand? So he told me. So I mixed up proportionally. You'll probably think it's funny, but I was mixing up like 2 buckets of sand with 1 bucket of cement. And so that would give me and how much water. And then I mix it and I get a bucket full of cement. And then I wasn't putting the cement in the cracks with a trowel. I was putting it in with my hands. And people were saying, oh, your hands are all going to be destroyed because cement ruins your hands. And I started to do it, and all of a sudden I knew I needed to put Vaseline on my hands. So I got hold of Vaseline on, and then went back, and I crazy paved the cement in between them all. Later, I did everything. Years later, I went back to just see. The bit that my ex-husband did was all cracked and coming out. The rest of it that I did was just as solid as the day I did it, with cars parked on it. And you know, it was the whole point of why I did it, because I wanted to be able to park my car on it at the time. So why am I using this as an example? I was stubborn because everybody was saying it can't be done, and I proved them wrong. I did it. And the bottom line is, anyone who's listening, I want you to understand, never listen to people who say it can't be done, you shouldn't do it, it's never going to work, whatever. If you have the heart, the passion, the desire to try. And even if you make mistakes, and believe you me, there are times when I did things and I did make mistakes, and I go, you know, my ugly face. But then I'd sit back and I'd think about it and question it. And if I needed to ask someone else, I'd get advice, but I'd still own it. I'd be the one that would lead my way, teach my way, do my way. And, you know, just if I go back into metaphysics, because I've been doing this all my whole life, I had so many people tell me it can't be done, it shouldn't be done, you're not this, you're not that. And I proved them all wrong.
And that's because you're defying logic.
That's my joy. I'm right and you're wrong. We gotta have some egotistical part of
we've got to be, you know, in a way for women in today's society, we really got to become, in a way, incorrigible.
Well, again, you know, we can't anymore say men are men and women are women thing, because we now know that we reincarnate over and over again, and we've all been men and women. You know, we've probably been animals too. Who cares? Nobody wants to know anyway. But if you go to the Hindu religion, they will walk around careful that they don't squash the ants, because that might be an ancestor. That's the way they think, you know. So the bottom line is, you go over there and they've got temples to rats, and there's rats everywhere running. I mean, it's really amazing to sit in a temple and let rats crawl all over you and eat bread that you feed them and so on. And I went to another temple, and that was all for monkeys and baboons, and I didn't like that because they were doing their bottoms at me, you know, and you didn't know if they're going to squirt you or anything. But hey, the monks, they would pet them and love them, and you know. So why am I pointing this out? Fear. I could have been afraid of the rats. I could have been afraid of the baboons. Instead, I saw it come up. I just said, if I'm afraid, the animal will be afraid. So I stepped back into my knowing self. I'm a spirit being. I let myself go there because I was in India. And next thing I know, all these baboons that have been jeering came and sat next to me. And I'm just sitting there like this, you know. And I had about 18 baboons all around me. And this guru's head of it came up and he said, "You're blessed. They like you." And I'm like, oh, okay, I better like them back. So the animals are no different. That's the point of my saying it. They reminisce. They feel the emotion. They feel us. We feel them. Same as I feel you. I feel Tom, Dick, and Harry up the road. We all feel one another. And if you're with someone who feels negative, what are you going to do? You're not going to stir them up and tell them they're negative and give a shit. No,
yes, you are.
You're going to walk away and let them have their moment of being negative.
But there's a point where there's a fine line where we do give them that tough love, or whether we let them deal with it on their own.
Let me answer that for you. Tough love is when we interfere. And the bottom line is, the more we interfere and say, you got to get this, you got to get your shit together, blah, 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 the more they don't. But if you leave them to wallow in their misery, they eventually come out of the forest of misery and say, help me, help me. And at that point, you ask them, what kind of help do you want? And that's where most people go wrong, because they immediately think, well, if it was me, I would need this help and that help. But we're not in their brain. We don't have their memories. We're not reminiscing about their pain and suffering. We're identifying to our own, and we're correlating. I am just like you. So I did this. So therefore, what I did works. It must help you. It doesn't. We have to say, what do you want? And if they don't know what they want, then you can throw a few suggestions and see if they bounce on it.
And a good therapist will never tell you what to do.
No. But there are a lot of them that do. I had a heavy session with some people. I won't say anything more, but I will say that Spirit was speaking through me, so that's where I work, telling about circumstances. And the more I'm trying to do it, and then all of a sudden, which it doesn't happen with me, Spirit guide got really strong and said, you have to listen to us. Because they were making excuses and going round and round. And of course I record everything, and they finally did listen, because the Spirit guide got that strong tone with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so sometimes we do have to have a strong tone, even as us humans. But the bottom line is, you still can't say this, you have to, you must, you've got to.
The whole idea,
you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do.
I mean, the whole idea of being a therapist in the first place is to be that lighthouse, to be that guiding light, to get them, it's almost like a person falls over in the street, they graze their knee, they're going ouchie, and they don't know how to overcome. And so then the therapist comes along, helps them up, and says, okay, where do we need to go? It might help them along the journey, or they might help them overcome the speed bump in order to get where they need to go.
Funny enough, you're saying this. I went to the bank the other day, and it was a woman on the floor. She's fallen. Of course, I said to her, do you need my help? Because I'm a doctor. And she said, no, fine, we'll call the ambulance. I said, fine, walked away. But when I got inside the bank, I found that there was nobody inside the bank. They were all out there trying to help her. And my point of that is to say that sometimes too many hands ruin the cooking, And so everybody was out there kind of, are you all right? Around her, she was getting all the attention she needed, but there was nobody getting attention, customers in the bank, because all the staff were outside. And so I was like everyone else in the bank waiting, and I was patient. I mean, I had an appointment, so it wasn't like a big deal. But I thought to myself, there's a lot going on here. The woman who fail's getting all the attention in the world she needs, and she was well out here, big size person, nicely put. And she was laughing and joking, and I said, "Are you hurting anywhere?" And she said, "No." But they called an ambulance anyway because she fell. So I thought to myself, she's going to go to the hospital. People are going to wait on her to see, check her and do x-rays and whatever. They're going to get to study their abilities in helping her. She's going to get more attention, which is something she needed and wanted. This just went through my mind in seconds. And the people who are outside, who are workers for the bank, are getting a break because of what she's doing, which I'm sure they're welcoming, having a break. And then all the people who are in the bank who are waiting in line for a teller to help them are all frustrated. So they get their lesser in patience. All this went through my mind in seconds, and I walked into the bank and I was laughing to myself. That's how I think we have to learn to look at the world, is to see the many angles that one person can, by falling over, make happen to many, many lives of many other people, from watchers and lookers on to performers and activity, to follow up and later events that we'll never even know about. It's having a panoramic, open mind. And I really honestly believe that we can only get it by assimilation of remembering our own lives and our experiences in all the details, good and bad. So it's why I pick reminiscing.
Yeah, I mean the greatest of teachings is that of experience, and so without experience we'd be lost individuals.
Mm. And that's another thing with the paranormal and the psyche and all that. On the average generations your age and going back, they didn't believe they could have visions and whatever, that one has today. And now there's these little kids. Well, I'll give you a story. It happened years ago, so it's not recent. He's probably grown up and a man now. But there was a case that's in one of my books where the family were concerned because the child was seeing grandma, and grandma had died under strange circumstances. The strange circumstances were they were making a journey, going, new husband, hadn't known him very long, got married, they were making a journey through the desert. And finally he gets her to a hospital where she's pronounced dead. And so they were thinking new husband's had killed her or something, and why is she turning up and the kids seeing her? So they come to me for an appointment, and the dead person comes to me, and she tells me exactly what's happened, that she had a heart attack. He stopped the car, he got out, her pet got out of the car. He was trying to get her resuscitated, blowing in her mouth. It didn't work. So without thinking about the dog, he got back in the car and drove like a mad person to the town, and which was Las Vegas, and into a hospital. And of course, they couldn't revive her. So the grandma tells me the true story, and they're saying, so there was no bad, he didn't do anything wrong to her or anything. No, he loved her and so on and so forth. And so I said, well, why is she showing up? I said, because the dog is dead in running wild in the desert, all on its own as a spirit. She wants it rescued. So they said, well, what's going to happen? I said, well, the spirit guides are helping with that. Don't worry about it and so on. But go home, you'll be fine. Your mother's going to go to heaven and so on and so forth. But she was earthbound because of this dog. That's the bottom line. So they go home. The child comes running up to them. Mommy, grandma was here. She's happy. She's got the dog and she's come to say bye-bye. And they're like, because they hadn't even walked in the door and this child's telling them. So they called me to tell me that had happened. and they was crying and so thankful that she was happy, and the fact that she was earthbound was because she couldn't find a little dog. And they hadn't even thought about where the dog was. They thought, you know, because they're thinking she'd been murdered or something. So here's an example by telling the story how imagination, illusions, fantasies take you into facts that aren't facts.
Which brings me to another thing. You just segued right into where I was going to go,
Okay.
and that is that what about those people who are wounded, who keep telling the same thing? These are people that are psychological manipulators that keep telling the same story over and over again, thinking that that is the story, and when it's very when it really isn't, and then they've told that story so much that it then becomes their personality, and that personality might actually be detrimental to their mental health.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people who have a lot of points of view, oblivious of whether it's, some relative died in an unknown country and they've gone to church and prayed for their soul, to someone who's locked up in prison for something they never did. And do 30 or 40 years before someone finally proves with DNA now that what they were supposed to have done 30 years ago. And there was a case that was on the news, that's why I'm bringing that up, where they finally proved he wasn't the murderer. Yeah, there's been a lot of judgment, there's been a lot of aggression from the Piscean age and the war ages and all that. And now we're in the Aquarian age. We have to realize we have a different, entirely different point of view.
Well, I'm talking. My statement was referring to those who are wounded in nature, but actually doing it for their own benefit. In other words, living a double life, or having a dissociative personality, by that becomes a habit.
So what I'm trying to follow what you're meaning, because there's so many different types of mental illnesses. You're talking about someone who shows themselves to be grounded in reality in the daytime, and at night puts on a frock and goes dancing.
I'm talking about.
I mean, you're talking a physical
I'm
change.
talking about a personality.
You're talking a mental change.
Mental.
Okay. So when you're talking about that, which group do you want to go to?
Well, we can just generalize it at this point.
So
generally, that would be the cluster B personality disorders. That's where dissociative personality comes from.
You have to realize that goes right back to the childhood. Multi-personalities. They're looking at X number of people come and go, and they're not really clarified, so they copycat, and it lies dormant within them. And as the years go by, and various happenings happen, those characteristics come out in different ways. But I have, in terms of being psychic and having so many of the great sages work with me that are long past, you could say I have multiple personalities. I'm mentally insane because I channel Jesus, Siddhartha Buddha, Rama, Kuan Yin.
Yeah, but
Archangel Haniel, somebody's going to say, that woman's definitely insane.
But you're not insane that you are going round and round and round in circles, retelling the same thing over and over again, leading to insanity. There's a big difference there. There
are people with obsessive compulsive disorders where there's a variety of them from, there's so many, my head gets crowded.
Well, that's why I said generalize.
Yeah. Summarizing it, I would say that they flip personality. The ones that I've dealt with over the years, especially in the mental institutes in England, it was a whole different consciousness to what it is today. So you didn't look with the eyes that you do today. So it was very different. So back, when I was a young nurse, they were off the wall. They were absolutely insane. But I could see that they were channeling earthbound spirits. And I would tell the doctors, this is not their mind. This is a spirit's talking through them. They're in trance. But they were all given drugs, galore. So they were all like, anyway. So it was just easy for a spirit to come in and possess them and talk through them. And so, yeah, you know, that was the negative side of it. But as the years went by and I was dealing more and more with people who were not in mental institutes, but who were on drugs by psychologists and psychiatrists, because that was the now norm, I still, I would say if I had 10 patients, 2 were really mentally hurt, emotionally, mentally, physically hurt, and mentally ill. Probably out of the other 8, 5 would be channeling. Okay. And then the others just didn't know. They just couldn't figure out who they were. You know, so I'd always get a couple who just never knew their talents, never knew their skills. And I've been able to direct them to have their skills and talents, and they're out there now doing great big jobs, famous even, some of them. You know, from singers, dancers, you know, because I've seen the famous and the infamous. You don't talk about them, but I can assure you I have, and from worldwide countries and that come to see me in England and those days, you know. And so, yes, I saw a melting pot of different states of mind. And so, out of my number of 10, I would say on average, 2 are really insane. The rest are having a hard time with their upbringing, they're psychic, and they're unstable because they don't know how to use it. And the other 2% are just lost in society.
So let me ask you a question. What type of clients have you seen mostly over the years?
All of them.
Generally, in most so let me go to ask that again. What type of clients have you seen with the most predominant condition from the past to now?
Well, because I've got to go in sheer numbers, I have to say post-traumatic stress disorders.
Okay.
Because you're not just talking war scenarios, which is what I was birthed into, and the recovery of London, because we were bombed. Even I don't remember the small shells, but according to my mother, every night, you know, the B1 and 2s came over around the time I was born and thereafter, but they were still dropping the small bombs, you know, hundreds of them on London. So you know, from her point of view, every night she thought, this is it, we're dead. So she was very matter of fact about it. In the talking of it, I think when you live with something so long, you just stop worrying about it, you know, just get on with the moment and that kind of thing. But this, I think, the second part that affected the war scenario was men and women not, you know, their roles were changed through the wars. They were functioning like women were now in factories, and now the men come home and the men are back in the factories and the women are back home making pies, you know. So that's just in that generation. And so by the time I got to be in my 40s, I think most of the people were marriage depressed, work depressed, and health depressed, with, you know, lots more cancer coming out and things like MS and MD was starting to manifest, and PD, of course. So it was more in those years, more mental illness from physical issues of living life. And then we go into, when I went into Japan in the 80s, tradition started going out the window. So that's when we started getting more people interested in the paranormal. That would be when you're born. And so that opened up much more of the world in terms of spiritual. And then we, like, you know, we had the Beatles, who were over in India. By the way, I knew them when they were kids. You know, I wish I could get hold of the one that's left, just to see if he remembers me, but that's by the by. But, you know, there was a big change in the 80s to the 90s, big change. And that was where you would come in, because that's when you started to be aware of computers. Okay, and that's when I started to learn just to make videos. You know, so yeah, and then so we get through the 90s and we get to the 20s, and we've just gone so far so quickly. I can't keep up with it. I mean, everybody's into something paranormal. You know, everybody wants a reading, everybody wants to know if they're going to live a long life, that kind of thing.
So, so now you've gone from PTSD to more
Everything,
connecting,
anything, you
connecting.
name it, they'll ask me anything.
Yeah, but I'm saying you're connecting in with people who are more looking for connection from the other side.
Well, yes and no, but that's never changed. There's always death, and there's always people who in some way upset and miserable because they've lost someone. And you know, when my mom and dad died, I didn't cry a tear. Not because I didn't love them, but because I knew they were better off in the spirit world now. Don't have all the pain or suffering that they had here. Same with my sister. You know, I was sad for my nephews. The tears were for them, not from losing my sister.
Yeah.
And you know, they said something. One of my boys said something that I didn't expect, but it's true. You are the senior member of the family now. And I went, oh, I got a new title. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. You know, I just, you know, so okay, I'm a senior member. What does that mean? Nothing much. Doesn't mean I'm going to go telling them what to do or anything. So, you know, when I see people now, they're much more open, they're much more receptive to who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What's my destiny? And what am I supposed to do? I've been doing this job for X number of years, and now I feel like I've done enough of that, and I'd like to be a counselor. Do you think I'd make one? You know, they're starting to answer things like that, questions, or they want classes. And of course, that leads us into, yes, we're building, and I'm going to let you take over now, Sumari Center and so on. Yeah, because we're running out of time, I think.
Yes, we are.
Mm.
Now,
So Samaris is going to have classes. I've just sent you a whole bunch.
yes.
And
So tell
you say
tell the
what you want to
listeners
say. Yeah.
tell the listeners about what's happening soon.
You're telling them or you want me to tell them?
No, you're telling them because you're doing the
Oh,
classes.
I'm telling All right. We've got easypeasysolutions.org where you can come, and Katie's building these sites right now. You can come and do lectures, talks, free, and or minimum small amount, so that we can pay for the apps that she's going to use to be able to teach you. She's going to do her classes, I'm doing mine, so we're doing separate things. And then we've got Sumari's Education Center, which has been my school under Universal Christ Church since 1983 for me in this country, but I had Samaris in England for 10 years before that. So it's been around a long time. Universal Christ Church is going to train ministers and coaches and counselors in philosophy, theology, spirituality. Sumari's Education will teach psychics to be card readers, and that's the kind of side of it. And then we're going to talk about therapies and other things. So we got a lot planned, but we're only 2 people, and we can only do so much at a time. And Katie's busy working what she's going to teach with her psychology and psychiatry and training and all the rest of it. So I'm leaving her to do more of that, and I'm going to do more of the psychic side, healing and stuff like that for now. Is that enough?
What about the classes in Havasu?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, we're right now I've got some people. I'm so bad, I don't remember. I've got some people here who want to, in Lake Havasu City, Mojave County, Arizona, who want to learn psychic development. And so we're doing beginner's level. Here in my home, I have a teaching room and a treatment room and a counseling room. I have a big house. And so in the teaching room, we will be doing psychic development, intro level, for anyone who wants to study. So what they have to do is give me a call, 928-486-1893. No spam, please. And the reason I say call is leave me a message and say you want to come to the class, and then I will call you back. If you don't leave me a message, I will not call you back, because I assume that all the numbers I get, the 928 numbers, if I don't know them, they're spam. You're deleted. So leave me a message. Or you can go to Professor Margaret, that's Prof Margaret, MARGARET, RBC@gmail.com, and put on the heading of the email, I want to join your psychic class. Leave your name and number and I'll call you. How's that?
Sounds good to me. Or you can text. Or you can text.
Yeah.
Or
so yeah, I didn't
us.
even think about that. What do I know about technology?
Well, you can always text. You can always DM through social media. We are on social media, all platforms. Well, the predominant ones anyway. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Go over to our Facebook page, or various Facebook pages. Soma Fusion Media. Go to somafusionmedia.com, soma-fusion.com for all of my stuff. If you would like to find out that we do have many shows on Soma Fusion Media that you can go check out. You can go over and see Margaret's sound archive, radio show archives up on soundcloud.com/Dr. Margaret Speaks. And there is well over, I think it's 175 archives over there now. So if you haven't been over there and you haven't listened to Dr. Margaret's shows of Journey into the Unknown
World, yeah.
There you go. Then I suggest you do go over there. But if you want to go check out Margaret's PR website, that's Samara Center with an ER on the end.com. easypeasysolutions.org, samaraseducationcenter.com, universalchristchurch.com, and askdrmargaret.com for all other stuff. Now, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I will say to you, please share, and subscribe. Communicate with us. Email us at samarasucc@gmail.com for any of your inquiries that you want to know about our show, our classes, or anything else that you want to drop forward. Even services. Both of us do therapy services. We also do counseling. We also do tarot and readings and so on and so forth.
Right, can I interject here just one thing? If you have a topic you'd like us to talk about on the show, or your shows, other shows, or whatever, we need input. We need your cooperation with us. After all, we're teachers, but we can only teach if you connect with us. So please follow us somehow.
Absolutely. And please go over to the YouTube channel as Soma Fusion, Mind, Body and Soul. Go share and subscribe there. We have shows up there a few nights a week. And we get a little bit of everybody's taste there. We don't do politics. We certainly don't do delve deep into the controversial subjects that will get us kicked off of social media. that we do not do. We are all about holistic healing and advocacy, raising awareness and education. So through each of the causes of our hosts right now, whether it be spirituality, whether it be just life in general, anything and everything to help you grow at that point.
One of the things I just want to say with the shows is I collectively took different shows, and we're going to down the road, both of us will be working with the topic. You can have that and listen, and then we're going to have you come on and talk about fear, pain, anger, guilt, loss, or the different types of relationships there are. We're planning on doing quite a bit in the future, in the new year. So go register.
Absolutely. And not only that, I will be relaunching Soma Fusion Radio as well. That's my own show that was on Wednesday nights. Depending on my workload for 2022, I may do a pre-recorded show or I may do a live show. I have yet to decide there. I have been on hiatus since, for months now, almost 9 months. And just by personal choice, because I have been dealing with a lot of things, life issues and health issues and so on and so forth. I for a little bit there, we all thought that I was going downhill health wise, but I'm recovering so far and just adjusting to the issues that I have at hand. So it's not a huge issue for me. But I am a very, very busy woman too. I will say that next year will come my 10th year anniversary as an author. So there will be a lot of things that is coming up for me, as well as the progression to go get my books be recognized in showbiz. So that is definitely coming up. I'm not going to tell you all the details yet, because
not yet.
but I will say to you that it is definitely on the cards. And
but you're also putting up all my books again, and you're doing the websites, and this girl is a Wonder Woman.
There is so many big things that there's so many big things that are coming that I haven't even put out public, and there's a reason for it. I mean, not everything should be public, and I'm not going to sit there and discuss my business tactics or my strategies or my whatever. I'm not going to put it out there in public, because I'm not all about all of that. I'm all about what I can give to the people that I work with, so that they can get their work out there too, because I'm not the special one here.
And our motive when we met, we just knew we entwined, so we have the same motive. But again, I'm going to say, we can have all the motive in the world, but without you guys joining us,
exactly,
we're motivated. So we need you to spread the word and let us know what you want. Okay,
exactly,
very important.
Well, that's it for this evening. We will be back next week at Saturday. Remember that we have a new show time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I will say that I don't know what the topic is going to be next week, but we'll tell you soon. We'll post it up on social media so that you know exactly what we are going to be doing. We have next week and the following week's shows left for this entire year before we go on break for New Year's and Christmas. But until then, we'll see you next week, bright and early, I hope, or evening. That's bright and late. Wherever you are in the world. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah,
happy
holidays. Take care, everyone. Bye.